Hey everybody, welcome to today's webinar. This is Darren here at Komprise. I'm here with Jeremy. We are going to be diving into deep analytics today. And Jeremy, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your role?
Sure. I'm Jeremy Esty. I'm a product manager with Komprise, and I'll be talking a little bit about deep analytics and a few other things.
Awesome. So just a couple of housekeeping items for folks who have not attended one of our customer success webinars. This is our 12th. You can actually go and see them all on demand. We have a YouTube channel as well. Go to komprise.com/techcrunch. There are some setting things to work through in BrightTalk. You can enlarge your screen at the top right. We do encourage questions. So, ask us what you want, and we will endeavor to get to all of those. I don't think we have any polls in this one. We'll try to stick to 30 minutes, but sometimes, depending on the questions, we do reserve the right to go over. And we're always excited to talk about deep analytics. So we're going to spend most of the time today in demos. So the agenda, we'll cover quickly some of the new updates that have come out over the last few months. We'll dive into deep analytics, and as I said, spend most of the time showing you some things that are already available and talking about some things that are coming soon. So, Jeremy, why don't you give us a brief overview of all the updates? There's a lot, probably even more than that are on this slide, that have come out since the 5X product line has been delivered.
Sure. So, big thing we have for 5.0 is data stores. So we have a whole bunch of storage insights. Impossible to list all the things that you can do in data stores starting in 5.0, and we've actually made further improvements since then. So I can show you a few of those. We've also done a lot with migration, a lot of new migration use cases we introduced in 5.0, and now we're adding more settings like starting automatically and iteration interval in 5.1. Our big things are object migration. So object to object was introduced in 5.2, and NAS to object and back or object to NAS was introduced in 5.4. And we have KCB for SMB now. So it started out with migration, so you can do SMB migrations without a Windows proxy. We will be adding KCP to SMB to other areas of the product as well going forward. A lot of platform updates. Source target sync is available for Windows Server as of 5.2. Continually adding more support for partner ecosystems. Most recently, NetApp REST API, Pure Storage Flash Beta as a target, and VAST as a target. And for reports, potential duplicates came out in 5.0, and we also have saving customized reports, which is an enhancement to the entire reporting interface that came in 5.3, and we had a webinar about that, but I'm happy to show you that again. So you can see here, customized reports now available. Rather than simply clicking on a report, making some edits, and downloading the report, you can now save whatever configuration you want and call that a new report. So you can, it becomes very easy to create different reports for many different uses. For example, you can create a showback report and save it for every single department in your organization. In the future, we will be allowing you to email scheduled reports as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so that webinar, you went into pretty good detail on all these reports, some of the details around them, and also the roadmap. So I encourage people to go and have a look at that. Also, if you've been attending these regularly, we have run a few different sessions on deep analytics specifically. Our most recent one, we had Benjamin Henry on, who went through some really interesting use cases around unlocking unrealized savings with deep analytics. So we talked about landing the data on the most cost-effective storage platform, offloading orphan data, and he did a refresher on how to add the deep analytics query to a plan, as what we call deep analytics actions. So that's a good one also to go and check out if you haven't attended or want to learn more about deep analytics. But you can also ask questions today. So what we're going to do today is review some of the new functionality that has been delivered in Deep Analytics, specifically the Directory Explorer. Jeremy's going to preview some things that are coming and talk about that. I think even show you a few things, which is always cool. Talk about the differences between query and tagging, and then increasingly we're seeing customers set up the Deep Analytics user role, so you can have users only using Deep Analytics to do some queries and tagging, but they can't actually operationalize those queries. They can't mobilize data, move, copy, confine, migrate. Just doing that kind of self-service, so they can find what they need and then work with their administrator teams to actually move data and manage data more effectively. So I think, Jeremy, that's kind of the setup for diving in. Are you ready to go and ready to kind of show more of this, then talk about it?
Yeah, let's jump in.
All right.
So let me share my screen. All right. So we're here in Komprise. This is an early version of 5.5. You can see here data stores. You'll notice a couple improvements that we've added. You can now resize the name bar. So if you have very long names, you can go over here, or if you want to add more space, you can make it a little shorter. We've also updated the filters somewhat. You can, and the sorting, you can sort directly on the columns now. And just a little pro tip, we have this hierarchy filter, which we'll soon make a little bit more apparent by giving it its own button. But this is something that is not always apparent to some customers. You can choose to, you may, for example, you want to search for particular things in data stores, and you'll notice that the view is still on your standard view, which is the hierarchy. And in this case, I'm looking for shares with the name NFS in them. If I want to be able to see the shares themselves, I can do that instantly without having to expand my view by changing to flat view. And now I can see all the shares and buckets here that fit my text search. And this also works for filtering or everything else. I can even do it without a search. I just get a flat view of everything at the lowest level, which is my shares and my buckets. So, and just to show you what we mentioned in the slides, you now have customizable reports. So you can go ahead and add a report, select a template, and then make whatever edits you want to make directly on the report. So now I'll jump to Deep Analytics. There's a feature that we added back in 4.10, I believe, could have been 4.9, which is the Directory Explorer in Deep Analytics. And when we added it, there was a limitation to its use in that you couldn't use those queries in plan. Starting in 5.5, you can now use those queries in plan. So let me go through a use case for how you can do that, or walk you through how you can do that. And this is a very useful thing to do if you have, for example, end users who you want to classify or want to decide for themselves what needs to be archived and what shouldn't be. So I'll just give a quick refresh. This can all be done by the admin user, but I think it's even more powerful to show when the query is done by a Deep Analytics user. So I'm going to show how that works right now, just a reminder of how our Deep Analytics user role works. And this will also comes in handy with tagging, which I'll show after this. So we have, you can go into your System Users tab, add a user. So I'll call this request. I'll give him an email. And I'll give him a deep analytics role. And now I can choose, do I want all access or restricted access? And this gives them access to specific shares managed by Komprise. You see this button turned into a next. And now I can decide I want to give him access to only this share right here. I can choose other shares as well, but in this case, we're going to limit him. Now I can log out and log back in as that user. So here, the query I was on is not visible to me. So no visible shares in query. I can make a new share selection and see exactly what I have access to. And again, this feature is available for everyone, but it's particularly powerful for users that want to tier documents based on directories. So here we can go in. I have a list of my directories inside of this particular share, and I can actually go as deep as I want. So I can select, say, multiple of these directories here. I can continue going and even select all, unselect, etc. And then I can add whatever other criteria I want. So maybe I want last modified to date to be, say, more than 3 years ago. And I also want only a few file types. I say I only want to get log files and audio files. And now I can save this as my query. Oh, actually, I'll call this Jeremy's query because the admin will be using it. So Jeremy's query. I will save it. And now I can log out and then log back in as the admin. Now I'll go ahead and create a fresh new plan. So we'll call this tiering plan. Call this group 1, and I'll make sure to add the share that was used in that query. So if the query had multiple shares in that query, I would have to make sure that the shares I add here include all of those shares. But if I want, I can actually create a superset of those shares. So maybe I want to also add something else. It'll allow me to do that as long as the share is included, that all the shares in the query are included in the shares in this group. And now I'll create a move policy based on a deep analytics query, and I will use Jeremy's query. So it'll tell me right here, the filters are one share, including specified directories, modified more than 3 years ago, and these file types. I can actually click on this for full transparency, and I get the list of the directories that I selected. If there's anything that is not in group shares, it will be it will appear with a strike through.
That's really powerful. Are you seeing more requests for this? Are more and more customers using it? What kind of feedback are you getting on the workflow?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of customers asking for this, and when we first came out with Deep Analytics, Directory Explorer and Deep Analytics, we did not yet have the ability to do this in plan. So we had a workaround, which was, I'll go back to Deep Analytics, and this still works. So you may still have queries pre 5.5 that use the directory path filter, and this can, in this case, I could type in, I don't remember the exact directories I use there, but actually I can go check. So I use the accounting directory. Oh, actually, let's go to the actual query. So Jeremy's query. So here I can get my overview. It was these things. I can copy them. I can put them into the directory path filter. I could go ahead and do it that way. The only and this will work for most use cases, but it's a little bit more effort. And if I have the same directory path duplicated in different shares, and I want to use multiple of those shares in that group, it could quickly get confusing. So that's just another way of doing that. Then I would go back to plan and put in the query that used the that used the filter with the directory path. This makes it much easier, and it's much and there's a lot more checks and balances. You can see an entire a lot more transparency here. It'll warn you if there's mismatches, and it'll still allow you, in this case, if you have extra things in your query that are not part of the group shares, it will actually allow you to do that. It just won't, nothing outside of your group shares will actually be moved.
So a question on the Deep Analytics user, and I've heard this before, kind of a logical question is, can you use groups instead of users? And is there a plan for that?
Yes. So over here, if I have Active Directory enabled, which is currently only available for on-premise customers, but if I have Active Directory integration enabled, I have another tab here called Groups, and then I can add groups the same way I would a user, and everybody in that group would then inherit those permissions. We do have we've had different requests for extending that to cloud deployments, and we have a few different roadmap things in place for that. But right now, it looks like there's a lot of the groups helps to bridge that gap where if you want a lot of different users to get access, it's a little bit less manual for the admin.
Great. And I know you're going to show the Directory Explorer in data stores. You kind of hit it pretty quickly in Deep Analytics. Can you just go back and show us what the Directory Explorer looks like in Deep Analytics for folks who might not be on the latest release before you go back into data stores?
Yeah, so this is a nice little sneak peek at a feature which we'll show more in depth in a upcoming webinar. But we now have the ability to view a Directory Explorer starting in 5.5, view a Directory Explorer within data stores itself. So this requires Deep Analytics, but if you have Deep Analytics and the crawl has completed, then you have this view directories option, and you can click it for any share that's been enabled. And now you can see that same directory structure with a little bit more information. So we have some of the metadata about the directory itself, and you have actions you can do on the directory, view details, and download you can get a CSV. You can also copy the path, so you can paste it into Deep Analytics or into a external Explorer or command line or anything you'd like. And you can also drill as deep as you want, so you can continue drilling deeper, and you can get all the details that we're collecting right now for these directories. In the future, we're going to be enhancing this even further, giving you actions around archival and recall, and even giving some more advanced statistics for each directory.
So data store is really starting to become a kind of a place where you will spend more time, it looks like, not just setting up data stores, but also getting all this insight. Can you just show, for folks who might not be as familiar with data stores, the columns, the different columns that you can bring in to data stores?
Oh yeah, so that we've got a lot of good feedback on this feature. So by default, you have a few columns, and I've already added a few, so this is beyond the default. But you can always customize these, and we have so many options to choose from. And you can even configure some of these. So for example, in this case, we have about 20 or so different columns that you can choose to show. And for example, with the configurable ones, cold data, you can decide what is my definition of cold data. And this will tell you, say if it's 1 year, or say you want it to be something else, you can change that in system settings. And you'll get a breakdown of how much data is cold. And additionally, growth is a change in the amount of data during a specified time frame. Currently, this is estimated based on the last access and last modified dates, but we have plans on making this more exact in the future. We have modified, which is also estimated, but is pretty spot on typically, and new also estimated based on the last access, or the create times of the data found, and that's also usually pretty spot on. So in my columns, I can go ahead and move them around. So say, let's say, size is very important to me, and departments are very important to me. I can go ahead and add these. And department is something you can add yourself. You can even change the name of this field very easily in system settings, so that you can further categorize your all of the data stores in your within your site or within your director.
Yeah, that was a question of can you show us those departments that are there now, and how do you set that up?
Sure. So I can go ahead. I'll just take this little shortcut for system sites. You can also get there from the top tab.
This is if you're an administrator, you have this option, correct?
Yes. And then let's see, where do we have it now? I go to global settings. And here I can edit my departments. So I can add, say, HR here. Oh, here it is. I can go ahead and change my name. So, yeah. And add accounting. So I can always change these, and these will apply directly on the on all the data stores I've already labeled. So it's just quickly if I change the name of this, it's just changing a pointer. There's no bulk operation needed. And then the department label, where did we put that? I've actually forgotten. But you can change the name of this department somewhere else, which I can get back to you on that.
come back to that. All right, let's go back to deep analytics. There's a question about tagging. What you showed was creating a deep analytics query and the power of doing that. Can you talk about tagging and when you might tag versus create a query?
Absolutely. So tagging is something that is becoming increasingly useful in the product. We're soon going to be coming out with smart data workflows, and we're also going to be allowing tagging of both files and directories within Data Directory Explorer and data stores. So there's going to be a huge proliferation of use cases around tagging. Right now, the most common use cases that I see from customers about tagging are: one, they will have many different users who they want to tag documents to label them appropriately, so that admins can then go in and create the right policies or do the right data actions on these files. So as an example, so that's use case number one. Use case number two is I want to capture something at a point in time. While a query, I might save something as a query. So for example, if I go to my example with Jeremy's query, here, this is the data that this end user, Jeremy, wants, or this data owner wants to make sure is archived, and he doesn't want the rest of it to be the rest of the data in his under his control to be archived. He saved this as a query so that going forward, this is always anything that falls into this criteria is going to be archived every time the crawl happens. But if he wants this to just be a point in time thing, he can go ahead and take this query, choose to apply tags, and here he can go ahead and create a new key. So I'll just use color. So color blue. And this is, or maybe actually for a more real world example, let's do, let's see, confidential, and then we'll call this value top secret. So there's a
key value pair you're doing here.
So there's a wide variety of things you can do, but generally you have your key and your value, so your category, and then the specific value within that category that applies to it. And I can add tag here and then apply. So every file in this query will be tagged with that tag. So then going forward, the admin can go into plan. So this is something that I'm still an admin here, but I can. This is something that the DA user could have done himself, and then I can go into plan, and as an admin I can create a query. So let's just do start with all data, and then I want to filter by this particular tag. So I select confidential, top secret. I run this query, and then I can save this query. And now I can go back to plan and use this query. And the beauty of this is that, one, this captures, so if my use case is I want this specific point in time results, this captures I'll get that. So if newly added data meets that criteria, in this case, it won't apply for my archival policy. But the other use case is I might have dozens of users who are all tagging their own data with this tag, and that way, if that happens, I can then create a policy based on that tag, and every single one of those users, because that can then tag their data. And every time they tag their data again, that data will be eligible in the next crawl to be archived.
Awesome. Hey, so Jeremy, and we're on the edge of time. I want to just, you mentioned reports. Can you just really quickly show us the report templates? I know we have covered that directionally, but we haven't covered it on one of these. So just really quick, I think it'd be powerful to show.
Sure. So here's one example. Show back is a great example where I can create from template, or I can do essentially the same thing by another method. I can go to my the report that is saved there by default, which is just called show back, and I can decide to I'll filter by share. Say I only want to do, I'll pick this the same share in this case, or let's do, yeah, let's pick another set. So then I want to do, say, call this Boston Showback. And I can edit my description. So summary of current data footprint for shares in Boston. And this could be a department, this could be a business unit, this could be really anything, any way I want to divide up my data. And I can, not only can I generate the PDF, but I can save this, or I can save a copy. So here I'll just save, and I've overwritten my showback template, but I can always create a new one. Or I could save a copy, and let's say Boston Showback copy. I can stay here, or I can view that report, and I can continue editing from there. So there's this comes in handy if I want to create many different reports that are slightly different. I configure everything, and then I save a copy and configure it slightly differently. And for showback, there's a few different variations you can have, but you can see how that can be very useful in something a little more complicated like potential duplicates. Then I can continually save many copies to, because potential duplicates is often an iterative thing where I can adjust my match criteria. So it's very useful to be able to save different versions of that, so I can compare one to the other.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks for taking us through all of that. Hopefully this is helpful sort of as a an overview of what you can do today and what's coming in the next release. A few best practices and things to be aware of is, a couple of the customizable reports Jeremy talked about, orphan data and potential duplicates, do require the use of deep analytics. So if you're only using Komprise for migration, or you're not, using the full suite of Komprise, then you'll want to definitely take advantage of that. And then the point in time you talked about, I thought that was really interesting on the tagging versus the query for ongoing criteria. That was kind of the difference between when to do a tag and when to query. We will, as Jeremy said, we're going to be doing a lot of interesting things with smart data workflow. So we'll do some sessions on that in future sessions. The Director Explorer is coming soon for data stores. It's already available for deep analytics. And do watch the reporting webinar if you want more on kind of where we're going and some tips and tricks around Komprise reporting. Anything I missed there, Jeremy? Did I cover it?
No, that covers everything.
All right. Well, hopefully this was useful for you all. For folks joining live, thanks for the questions. For folks on the recording, check out both our support portal. You can find more details about this, as well as on the TechCrunch website. And send us a request, an email, if there's topics you want us to cover in future sessions. These are for customers and for partners, for you all to get more direct access and interactions with product management and some of our experts. So please let us know what other topics you want to cover. Jeremy, thanks for a great overview, great set of demos. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks a bunch, Darren.